So with the beta concluded for Battlefield 6, I think there are a few things I've made up my mind about. As you'll be seeing here, one of those things is going to be the open-close weapons debate. For the most part, while I've been vocal about my stance, always leaning towards closed weapons, I was keeping an open mind to open weapons. Because maybe, just maybe, the Battlefield devs were going to prove me wrong on this one. Nope. They failed to do that. But before we dive into it, just want to say, if you enjoy the content and want more from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified on when I do drop more content. Battlefield content will be persistent on the channel, as well as the usual stuff we already do with Destiny 2 and Rainbow Six Siege, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that stuff. With out the way, let's talk about why closed weapons needs to be the default come launch. The design philosophy around this choice has always puzzled me for a Battlefield game, especially coming off the disaster that was 2042. Weapons were open for all operators, and well, one of many reasons for that game's shortcomings. Devs in the most recent blog post about the glass system, to be fair, this was before we got an actual reveal for multiplayer, they said this: our current focus for classes is to have players recognize and intuitively feel the unique identity that each class brings to their squad on the battlefield. To have the interconnected systems and fundamentals of each class shape their role, while granting the freedom to customize how to execute that role. While on paper this may have sounded great, in practice during the beta, they have failed big time. Open weapons lead to multiple issues, the biggest being that it made classes way too unbalanced. The support class with the open system just becomes leaps and bounds better than every other class, and honestly, the competition is not even going to be remotely close. The assault class also just becomes more of a non-factor on the battlefield because, besides the fact that assault rifles can be powerful, their strongest tool, which is those assault rifles, is going to be open to use on other classes, and besides those weapons, I don't have much good to say on the actual impact of this class on the battlefield. Engineers and recons also fall into the trap that they are only ever truly needed for niche moments. This is not going to be a healthy system for a Battlefield game, and like I said before, weapon selection is part of what makes a class a class. Sure, not every map is going to be great for engineers, but let's say that map is a close quarters map. You still might end up picking that class because it has the SMG as its signature weapon and you can only use it there. There are choices to be made under a closed weapon systems, and with those choices, there are going to be consequences to that. The open weapon system just lacks any of that classic Battlefield design philosophy, and it's unfortunate and it's clear. There are ways to innovate the franchise like they've indicated they wanted to do because, again, it's fair to do that. I don't want to always play Bad Company 2 because eventually that will get old, even though I consider it one of the greatest shooters of all time. But clearly, one thing that has not worked, whether it be 2042 or in Battlefield 6's beta, is going to be open weapons. We need to stop trying to innovate here. I do think the Gunsmith is a good attempt at innovating classes and weapons, even though I do have my issues there. And to be fair, all I can say is that thank God there was a closed weapons playlist to salvage the beta experience for myself and just give me hope for the launch of just playing that experience. This allows players to get that true Battlefield experience, but to be fair, this is still not perfect, and we will talk about why that is fairly soon. Now, before we talk about what I do think needs to happen, let's talk about the gunplay if you are using a weapon that is not the signature weapon of that class. If you're unaware, the devs, instead of the addition of the closed weapon setting we later saw and experienced in the beta, they were pretty sold on this signature weapon concept that was going to make players lean into those certain weapons that were supposed to be tied to the class. So assault rifles were the signature weapon of the assault class, SMGs for the engineers, LMGs for support, and snipers for recons. Each class had their own added benefit if you chose to use the matching weapon, but nothing here during the beta actually felt meaningful at all or made you lean into choosing those weapons. LMGs got added mobility if you were using it on support, but still, LMGs felt very clunky, and to be fair, they were LMGs, they should feel like that. The added mobility is nice, but I don't know who's trying to run and gun with a light machine gun in Battlefield. This isn't Call of Duty. You got to pick your lanes. You got to be smart about it. I don't know much of what they were aiming for with this added mobility benefit. The traits are just not significant enough to honestly push people to care about this, which was the whole reason to create this choice for players. I personally could not tell in the gunplay with these signature traits, which continues to hammer down that this just wasn't doing enough. So what do you do then if these traits weren't doing enough? You make the weapons have terrible stats like more recoil or more bloom if you decide to use them outside those signature traits or signature classes they're tied to. I don't think that's ideal. You're just confusing players who think they're actually going to be getting the chance to create that free to execute their role decision you wanted them to make. So the open system just seems lost in translation when it comes to trying to bring it to life in an in-game experience. When you aren't making signature weapons feel like their signature weapon, you then enter the number one issue I have with this system. Players will choose weapons off time to kill numbers and the most powerful class they could use. This cannot be the case in Battlefield. It's funny that they understand the importance of classes, but just can't fully move past open weapons. So what's the fix here? Well, they've already implemented it. They just now need to not be stubborn on the choice they need to make. Throughout the beta, players were given many different choices, whether it be Conquest, Breakthrough, Close Quarters, or even All-Out Warfare. But if you selected Conquest, this was by default the open weapons system. If you wanted closed weapons, you were at the mercy of a few curated playlists, one or two, and during the final weekend, only through closed weapons All-Out Warfare. I'm not a fan of Breakthrough, honestly. I want my Conquest. And last I checked, a big chunk of the player base also wants closed weapons. So all we have to do here, honestly, if I'm being fair, is closed weapons should be the default setting and open weapons should be the one saying open weapons All-Out Warfare. If a player wants to play Conquest, they should be limited to closed weapons. If they want to be able to use whatever weapon they want, then let them do that in an open weapons All-Out Warfare. Leave Conquest, Breakthrough, all these basic modes to closed weapons. You just toggle the system and you make the default experience the true Battlefield experience. And if you do want people to have that freedom, then just let them do it in their own playlist. I don't think enough players, maybe I'm wrong, will commit to open weapons. I think they would want closed weapons. It's just, at this point, if they can't even do the bare minimum of what I just said, then the devs are just being flat out ignorant on this issue, and that just completely bothers me. But yeah, that's the video. I truly did enjoy my time in the beta, even though this is a highly negative video. I would even say that Battlefield is back, but open weapons is going to be one of those standout issues that is very easy to fix. Just going to be a question on if the devs will be willing to open, but open weapons is one of those standout issues that is so easy to fix. Just a question if the devs will be open to saying they are wrong before launch. I'm sure I'm not alone on this argument with open weapons, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say on it. So drop a comment down below. We can have a conversation on it. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop this video a like, helps out the video a ton. And of course, if you want more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified on when I do drop more content. Thank you for watching as always. Until next time, ShadowNinja here, and I'm out.